Okay, so then we go straight into the presentation, but I'll give you a slight little background. It's pretty much exactly what Eliana said. I worked in the state services in the Transkei for 2 years. And once I qualified, and which was a very fantastic experience, I was there doing mainly primary animal health care and ran a little private or a community practice at the Dutchwa state vet offices. And in 2011, there was an opportunity to move down to Darling. The vet down here at that stage, and still is one of the vets with us, is Dr. Jannie van der Merwe. He was on his own, and the workload was just becoming a bit too much. And not due to his work ethic. This is probably the most hardworking vet I've worked with. And since then, there were 2 of us. We operated just the 2 of us. I worked for him as an employee. And in 2014, the practice merged with Tygerberg Animal Hospital, which is TAH, the animal hospital and vet shop. And yeah, I'm a partner within that business now. We 10 shareholders are partners, and we have a couple of branches in the Western Cape and then in KwaZulu-Natal as well. So I've had the experience of working in sort of a small 1-2 man rural practice and administrating or running a business from that point of view, which I think there are a lot of those sort of practices around the country as well. I did that for 3 years. And then also on the other side, being part of Tygerberg Animal Hospital, where we've got a very big central support function. So a lot of the administration and management, which I'm going to be speaking about, is centralized. And there's obviously a lot of pros to that, but there's some cons to it as well. So yeah, experience on both sides. We also in 2012-13 bought a practice in Mariatsburg, which we had for about 8 years, and we sold that, I think 2 years ago now, or 3 years ago. So yeah, experience with the challenges and the nitty-gritties of running a rural practice or a mixed practice. Our practice in Darling is we are accountable for about 80% of the dairy herds in the Swartland and Koeberg area. We've got about 15 to 20,000 cows in milk on our books, and yeah, not a lot of clients, but they're big milking herds. So that will form the basis for my next slide, which is so the difference between a rural or production-based practice and a companion animal practice, which you'd find in an urban area. Our practice is, from a revenue point of view, about 90% of our revenue is from, if not more, is from about 10 dairy herds. And that then obviously forms the, your relationship with those dairies forms the backbone of our income. And that's where I've highlighted in point number 2, it's a business to business type relationship, where if you running a companion animal practice in a town or a city, it's more of a business to customer based practice. So it's you're managing relationships with those clients. You're very integrated and involved with those dairies, and you're often involved with management meetings. You're not just going to the farm and doing normal herd runs or PDs. You're doing that is the majority of your work and clinical cases. And we're probably spending, we're on most of our farms once, twice, even 3 times a week. And you've got, quite in-depth relationships with those owners of those farms, and they'll consult with you for a lot of management decisions. And you've got to handle those relationships as a business to business type of relationship. And what that obviously would also mean is that you're going to be discussing on a companion animal side clients can be price sensitive, and obviously you're going to be estimating and giving quotes quite regularly to clients before you do any procedures or whatnot. But on the production animal side, because it's business to business, you're going to be often involved in financial discussions. So where the client is making financial decisions, but also, questioning yourself and what you're charging or quoting. And I think that's been an eye-opener, is one mustn't be, you mustn't think going into this that you're not gonna, you're a vet, but if you want to run a successful business, you've got to be able to have business type discussions with your clients. And I enjoy them. It's not always easy. They often can be quite stressful, but that is definitely part of our type of business, and being a dairy vet or any sort of mixed or production animal practitioner. Other key differences between urban practice or companion animal based practice and production practice or rural practice is, things like staffing. There's a lot more staff available from companion animal practices. Even though at the moment the availability of vets in the country there's still scarcity of vets, but that's even more so we find on the mixed practice side, and I'll get to that a little bit later why that's an issue, and maybe the students on board can help us solve those problems. And the hours, so that would also form part of why it's not such an attractive field to a lot of vets finishing up at Onderstepoort or wherever. And this is a global problem. But as I said, I'll touch on that a little bit later. The hours in a production animal practice are random hours out at 6 o'clock this morning. And, then I have some time off at lunchtime and a little bit of work later on again, and in between doing administration. And I'm one of 4 vets at our practice. I said we started with 2, myself and Jannie van der Merwe, and we're now 4 vets in Darling. And, that everyone, I was at the practice at 6 o'clock this morning, and Jannie was also picking up his stuff at 6 o'clock this morning on his way out to his first herd visit. And I might finish, the benefit is we often finish quite a bit earlier. We finish at about 5 o'clock, whereas our colleagues in Cape Town, their hours are typically 8 till 12. They might have off from 12 till 2 if they're lucky, and they'll be working again from 3 to 6:30. So they normally work quite a bit later, and there's obviously the variation in after hours between the 2 businesses as well. We don't have a huge amount of after hours, but on the small animal side, you're probably going to have a lot more demands from an after hours point of view. So that's just something to bear in mind. And then the type of vet who is going to be involved with a rural practice, and the type of vet who's going to be potentially working in a companion animal practice. Generally, and this is just generally and maybe more of opinion than fact, but the type of vet who is working in a rural practice is someone who's willing to, you're going to be called on after hours or with those early mornings, as I said. You normally form part of the community. You sort of friends with your clients. You've got those sort of relationships with them, and it tends to be a vet or a person who ends up being a business owner more often than not, because there's such a sort of investment in the business besides just an 8 till 5 or 8 till 6 type job. And on the urban side or companion animal side, it's types of vets, and this is a change in general, I suppose, is that the vets are as long as one's got the nice toys and equipment and good medicine cases or surgery cases, it's just different people on either side. Okay, so let's see if that's all on that point. Okay, so you're coming out of Onderstepoort, and you've got some options then if you want to be a dairy vet or I suppose a feedlot vet or work with production animals. And your options there are to go straight into sort of a mixed practice, standalone, be on your own, or with another vet. Or you might, which is becoming more and more the norm, I think now, is mixed practice, which is part of a larger group of practices. Even overseas in the UK now, initially CVS, I think it's one of the largest group of practices in the UK. They were consolidating mainly small animal practices because they are probably a more profitable business and easier to scale. But it's gotten to a point now where even mixed practices are also getting swallowed up by or consolidated as part of these larger sort of corporate type veterinary groups. So that would be the one option, or often is the case now to go into consultancy. And the South African Veterinary Council has an option as well where you can become a consultant. That's a lot less overheads, and you can literally practice out of your bakkie if you meet all the requirements. And a lot of vets are doing that as well. And I think more and more as the needs of our farmers for how vets are involved in their dairies changes, we're probably going to be doing less of the technical work. I suppose that's going to be taken over. It seems to be taken over by technicians, and that could happen more. And vets are going to be more involved as a consultant on those dairies, as I said, helping from a management point of view, and analyzing and interpreting records, and more of an advisory role. Also, something else which is happening, and it's going to happen as well as your larger farming groups or large intensive production units grow, it's often more feasible for them to just employ their own vet, and then you're involved and that's happened for years overseas already. You employed more as a management or as a manager on that farm, and obviously performing all the things that you've learned as a veterinarian, or the skill set that you have as a veterinarian is often very valuable for those dairies. And then the other option would be vets being part of consultants, wholesalers or co-ops, or even pharmaceutical groups. Okay. What I'm going to discuss now is, so that's been more of just giving a bit of perspective of the industry and how we're involved with dairies and what the outlook potentially is and what the options are that's out there. And this is more the nitty-gritty of practice management, and this is applicable to most businesses. We had VBM, veterinary business management, when I was still at Onderstepoort, and that will cover a lot of what I'm going through now. And a lot of the management practices are generic through most businesses, from an administrative point of view, HR. So I'm just going to run through those things now. And yeah, one can't shy away from them. It's definitely, you've got quite an idealistic outlook on business, and it's exciting, and from an entrepreneurial point of view, but the finer details, devil's in the details, definitely applicable within a veterinary practice. And I think I'll touch on it a little bit later, but one thing which I've found hard personally is being a busy veterinarian, and I manage the production animal side of Tygerberg, which isn't a huge part of the revenue of Tygerberg, but it's substantial. It's about 10% of revenue of the whole business. And it's managing your work and then finding time and energy to manage the business as well. And I think that's definitely been a big upside for myself and for our business being part of Tygerberg, is that a lot of that has been centralized. And there's things which, you can't put your head in the sand and be ignorant about it. You've got to still know what's going on in the business, especially if you are managing it. So you've got to be up to date, and that's from a record keeping side, as well as, you're at the coalface, and your relationship with your staff it's going to be much more important for you than your central or administrative central side support function. So there's a lot of things which we were able to remove, and which our central support services does for us. And that's definitely tightened up a lot of our systems, and it's very good to have a sort of more independent outside eye analyzing what you're doing and helping manage that. And it's definitely taken a lot of stress away from us, and I think it's definitely been to the benefit of our business. Let's see if that's everything on that point. All right, so you're coming out of Honest Report and you're going into either established practice, or you've got an idea to open up your own practice, or you started a practice and you see that, well, there's a lot of things that need to improve at this practice. There's a lot of existing practices in the rural setting in South Africa where there's an older generation of vets who were incredibly good vets, but from a business point of view, also good business. I'm going to get a clout from some of them later, but you'll probably see, being a young person coming out and having different ideas, that there is a lot of room for improvement from how a lot of these businesses are run, and making those businesses a lot more efficient. So this is just a basic step by step, and if one needs to look at this, you're going to have to do MBA to properly understand and get to grips with what one needs to do. But basic human resource management. So payroll would form part of that, managing leave, performance reviews, disciplinary hearings, any meetings or communications, salaries. And just to run through that, so our payroll is done centrally. Our leave, we obviously manage remotely at the practice between each other. So there's a scheduling part, but then centrally it's managed from a administrative point of view. So, how much leave people have, and if they're going over the leave, sick leave, whatnot. Performance reviews, that'll be set up, the templates centrally, but we'll be doing those remotely, obviously, because we got the relationships with our staff. And disciplinary hearings as well. Any sort of, I think for some people, I don't think human resource management comes naturally to anyone really. And it's definitely something which you can probably read about, but I think it's definitely a experience-based thing. Some people definitely do have a knack for it. We've got a resource manager who's phenomenal, and she really helps out massively with any human resource problems or hiring or whatnot. Some people just do have a knack for dealing with people, and if you can find those people, or if you can learn to be better at doing that, that will definitely stand you well in any business. Salaries as well. Salaries been quite a big thing in the past. Obviously, it's always a big thing, but we were, obviously, as vets, there was a guideline that the SABC used to put out for salaries, and that was, I think, found to be anti-competitive, or which is right. And now people are being paid more what the market is for their services, which is a much more fairer model, obviously, than dictating. So to both sides, to companies and employees and employers. So that's something, salary scales and ranges are something that we constantly are looking at, so that it's fair on both sides. And Yeah, the one of the biggest thing for us is if you're in an urban area, you'll call it your basket or your availability of staff, not just vets, um, but receptionists, orderlies, drivers, tea ladies, be it whatever, is often a lot bigger. You might be paying slightly more, but in the rural areas, the availability is a lot less, and specifically with regards to skilled staff. So it's taking us a long time to build up the team that we have. We have an incredible team at Darling. We're 10 staff members, and yeah, so we've got a cleaner or orderly, a driver, 4 vets, 3 receptionists, a nurse, yeah, and I said a driver as well. So finding and building that team, I think, is a lot. It's tough anyway, but in a rural setting, it's, I think, quite a bit harder. So that's definitely something to bear in mind, and how one attracts and retains staff is key to the success of any business, is having the right team. Okay, from a financial management point of view, this is also something that one is either good at, or you more often than not, you're going to have, it depends on the size and type of practice that you have, but a bookkeeper or someone who's got a financial background. So on our side, for example, we've got our central finance department, which will manage things like payments, supply payments, you know, the high level reporting. There's quite a solid financial department in our business, and then within our practice, we've still got, we're obviously receiving the stock at the practice. You are booking out services and whatever to clients and products to clients, debtors, creditors. So there's a lot of financial activities happening all the time, and obviously that's going to determine whether you have a financially successful business or not. And I mean, it doesn't help studying for 7 years and becoming a vet and being involved and working hard, and it's not just being a vet, but for the business itself, if it's not properly managed. And I think having a astute, efficient, financially orientated people involved is key. It's probably the within any business, that's the starting point on human resource management, being able to manage your staff and your people and whatnot, but then managing the finances and being able to interpret reports, cash flow, and having sort of understanding of how the finances of a business works. And within a dairy type practice, and I think that's the same in any other veterinary business where you, as I said, are business to business and not business to customer or business to client, small animal client. A lot of that business is cash business. And within a production animal practice, a lot of the accounts are running on 30 days. So you've got a 30-day account with your clients and a 30-day account with your supplier. And you are running up a lot of bills in a month, and that might be service bills or selling of products bills, and you're invoicing that at the end of the month, and they're paying you at the end of the following month, and your suppliers are doing the same with you. So you're running very, very big accounts with these clients, and I'll get to the margins later on stock, but you've got very low margins on stock, and the management of those accounts and the way in which things are booked out is crucial to the financial longevity or sustainability of a rural practice or a production animal practice. And that's one thing you must remember as well, is that one mustn't be, clients might, as we push our luck with suppliers and ask for 60-day payment terms, you might have clients that are bad debtors or paying, 60 days. And if that's a big account, that can really cripple a practice. And one needs to be very, very cautious of not just selecting your clients, but knowing how your clients work and also being completely upfront and transparent with them. And clients can't expect you to provide them with a service if you're not making a profit. It's just it's common sense. So that's why I say the lag between cash coming in, cash going out. If your supplier, your MSD or Zoetis is they're not going to supply to you. Well, they might give you, it might be a little bit lenient, but if you haven't paid that account to them within 30 days, and you're going to be liable for that payment. And if your clients aren't paying you on the same terms, it's a recipe for disaster. And as I say, one client can go up into millions very quickly with sort of the larger size dairies. This is just an example of a profit and loss sheet that we use, but it's quite a generic one. So it's a P&L or income statement, and this is probably what I'd look at and compare it quarter to quarter, month to month, annual growth. How did we do this month to last month? How are we for the last 12 months, year to date? We break our revenue up into our clinical fees. So that's whatever's booked out from a services point of view. Sorry. And then we have a farm, medicines and chemicals. We sell some chemicals to our clients as well, category. And then we've got a small animal medicines retail. So that's within our Darling branch. And then that'll be consolidated within TAH. And that's a more high level analysis of all the different business units. But this is what one would look at within a individual practice. That will give you a total revenue. I've given there the sort of gross margin, the profit margin. So your revenue minus your cost of sales. So obviously your clinical fees are going to be very high profit, gross profit, before you start subtracting all the other vet costs and motor costs and whatnot. Farm medicines, as you can see there, comparing the two that I was speaking about a little bit earlier, your small animal medicines and retail or over-the-counter type things. So that would be Brevectos and beds and food, dog food, heels, and then the medicines that you're using in a small animal practice. They running at about a 30 to 40% gross profit margin. So that would mean a markup of anywhere between 30 and 50%, depending on what the market is. It used to be historically a lot higher, and it's obviously due to competition now and whatnot, it's come down, but it's still very high when you compare it to sort of margins that we're running on a farm medicine side of the business. There you're running on a gross profit margin of about 10 to 15%. So that would mean a markup at anything between 10 to 17.5%. One would obviously hope that the volumes would be a lot higher, but that is just the nature of the beast within the production animal veterinary business. So you're looking at a gross profit margin on the bad side of about 35% up to about 45% if you're doing really well on your margins. And then obviously just the split of your business. You can have a lot more clinical fees and not really focus on the others, and you're going to have a much healthier gross margin. Yeah, that's just quickly on that point. One must also remember, in an urban setting, urban practice, you've probably got a lot higher overheads. So your rent's probably going to be higher. You're probably going to have more expensive equipment. whereas a production animal vet, you can run on a lot leaner business. You probably need your scanner and some, clinical equipment. You are driving a bakkie or car that you need to pay off and include in your costs, but that's normally obviously you're booking that out to the clients in the kilometers that you're driving, offsetting that. So that's also just something to bear in mind when you're comparing an urban practice and a rural production animal practice. Then these are just a basic sort of examples of what your other costs would be: professional employee costs, rent costs, and then obviously not to exclude your bad debt costs, to keep a careful eye on that. And yeah, so from I stand to be corrected, but I think our vet employee costs are about 20% of our revenue. And on the small animal side, you're running quite a bit higher vets as a percentage of revenue, because you're probably going to have more vets. But that's also one thing I can't remember the benchmarks on our employee costs as a percentage of revenue. But that's another thing to look at, is your costs as a percentage of revenue, and one can use that as benchmarking and seeing how you compare to other similar businesses in the industry. Okay, so there I mentioned the reporting or analysis we would do on that. That would then be quarterly change, annual change, gross margins I've gone through, expenses, and then whatever you term the next line once you've taken off all those costs, your operating profit or your EBITDA, earnings before interest, tax, depreciation and appreciation, or just EBIT. And that's also used as a way to value a business, and that's a little bit more sort of higher level when you're buying practices or looking at valuing businesses. It's always been used just as net profit, which is a little bit lower down on the P&L. So it's not a new thing, but those are just, it's more sort of financial terminology. From an operational point of view, that would be your maintenance of your building. Do you own the building? Do you lease it from someone else? Is the landlord responsible for maintaining that business or that building? So like our building, one of the shareholders owns the building. He's responsible for the outside of the building. We're responsible for the inside of the building. Management of equipment, ordering new equipment, any other assets within the business, phones, internet, computer, and. This is also, we've got someone centrally that does this for us, and that's a positive in that it's obviously something less to worry about, but sometimes it can slow the process down. And if someone doesn't have a local knowledge of local suppliers and local electricians, and they use someone sort of from a different area because they've got a relationship with them, it can slow things down. So being on the ground and having relationships with people to help you run your business in your town, obviously, is integral. Okay. I'm going to touch on stock management, and as I said, it depends into what direction one goes with how you are involved with dairies or feedlots or piggeries or whatnot, and the structure of your business, and whether stock is part of your business model. I'm going to speak about it because it is a big part of our business model. From a revenue part, it's big. But from a profitability part, it's, as I said, you're running at low margins, but it still is a very important contributor. So we've increased our med and revenue sales over the last 10 years by about 3 times, and a huge chunk of our costs wouldn't be able to be covered without. So that's just the running of the business, not necessarily our income as individuals, without the income from sales. And it's definitely we've tried to position ourselves as a one-stop shop for our clients. there was a stigma, and there is definitely a stigma attached to veterinarians being more expensive when it comes to the sale of medicines, but I think that's changed over the years. Being able to compete, it's a price-driven thing, and we're definitely able to compete on price with wholesalers and co-ops. And yeah, I've just always had an interest in it, and Yanni's had an interest in it, and we've always said, why must we give the farmer the information and then they go buy the medicine somewhere else? If we're able to provide them the stock at a competitive price, then that's obviously, but it'll be good if they can buy it from us. And I do believe, because we as veterinarians are on that farm weekly and regularly, we're going to make sure that they're injecting the right product at the right dose. We're going to make sure that vaccines that we're selling, the cold chain's been managed properly, because we've got the knowledge to understand the importance of proper product handling and vaccine handling. And that's why I definitely advocate that being within the veterinarian's hand, not purely from a revenue point of view. As I said, there's a big cost implication. You're carrying a lot of stock. There's a lot of management that comes with that. And we ask every now and then whether it's worthwhile to keep that, part of our business, because it is a capital intensive activity, and it's high risk and relatively low reward at the end of the day. But we definitely have kept with it, and we've grown that healthily. So managing of your stock levels, ordering over the years, we've got very good relationships with our suppliers, or I believe we've got good business relationships with our suppliers, and that's helped us with regards to them wanting us to also sell their medicine. Though a lot of them do prefer putting it through the veterinary channel, because they know it's being utilized or used properly, and comebacks are potentially going to be less. So there's benefits, and they also want a vet advocating, or veterinary practice advocating the use of their product. There's a legitimacy to that. So there's a pro on the supplier side and on our side. And I think over the years, there's definitely been a good number of veterinary practices within South Africa and all around that have really stepped up with regards to the way in which they distribute medicines, and it's become a good channel for pharmaceutical companies. Software, I haven't even spoken about software, so I've put that on stock management, but it should probably have its own page. And that's a big headache for a lot of veterinarians in South Africa. Definitely, there's probably 4 software or practice management software systems, or whatever you want to call them, out there. And they all have their pros and cons, but you must be very careful and do your homework with regards to the type of software that you use to manage your practice. That can cause a huge amount of headaches, and if you don't have the right software, it can take a huge amount of time to work out how it works if it's not designed properly. And if not, the ease to use is incredibly important. And then how reliable it is, the backup you get from the companies. We've recently gone into EasyVet on all the practices, because we're a big group of veterinary practices. As we buy practices, you're inheriting their software systems, and that's made it very difficult for us to report on the different financial or stock or whatnot aspects of all those practices. So we've gone onto one software system, a cloud-based system throughout all the practices, and the amount of time that saved me and our business being on a efficient system. We do struggle a little bit because they are based in the UK, so you don't get as quick turnaround time, but it's definitely good. But that is definitely something to bear in mind. Stock takes, expiry dates, those are all very important things. Expiry dates on products, one needs to be completely on top of that as much as possible, because expired stock can also cripple a business. If you've got a good relationship with your supplier, you can organize, if you're on top of your stock as it's expiring, we try to have a 3-month sort of lead time or whatever you want to call it on expiring stock, and then try and organize with suppliers to exchange that stock for sort of longer dated stock. But that's not always the case, so stay on top of that. Yeah, determining the stock level to keep anything from half of your turnover. I think we're carrying a huge amount of stock at the moment. We're probably carrying what our turnover is in stock value. We order, our stock levels are based on obviously our current stock level. Historical sales over the last 3 months, we look at sort of what that is, average of what our sales have been, and that gives us an indicator of how much we should be carrying. And then our expected sales going forward, any seasonal fluctuations, whether there's chlamydia coming up or lumpy skin or anything like that, and ordering according to what we predict the demand to be, or contacting clients and getting them to commit to an amount before we order. Yeah, no order times, your lead times that you order stock, how long is it going to take to get to you? Is it 3 days? Is it 5 days? Some companies are very good with how long they take to get stock to you, some not so much. Marketing, we do a bit of that centrally. What sort of channel do you use? Digital, newspaper, social media, reps? I think relationship with the suppliers is very important on that point of view. Networking, there's a lot of opportunities at Farmers Days, all of those opportunities one needs to use. But word of mouth and just building a good brand is probably the best way to market yourself. This is, along with it's also just the cornerstone of any veterinary business, and this is the legal side of it, and the protection of yourself and the protection of your business is as important as the human resource management and financial side of it, is getting a decent vet protection insurance in place. It's always everything goes well until it doesn't go well, and it's just good to know that you've got someone on your side who has probably dealt with a similar situation, and that a lot of problems with, whether it is your fault or not, or misunderstandings, miscommunication, a lot of these things can be managed well if someone is legally versed and has that legal knowledge. So forming a relationship, Vet Protect is one, for example, having a good relationship with people within those businesses or lawyers or whatnot, just to help you out in situations where necessary. And yeah, that's staff issues as well as a human resource within businesses, whether it's disputes between partners. Hopefully that's not the case, but definitely if you are a vet, you need to have decent indemnity in place and be covered sufficiently for that. From a legal point of view, how do you set up your business, getting people involved from that point of view? Any client supplier issues, we've never really had that with suppliers. Clients, as I said, potentially. I think just a little one on this is obviously transparency with clients on anything, as in life, is incredibly important, on transparency, but also managing expectations with your clients is incredibly important. To have a decent understanding what is required of you in your position as the veterinarian on that farm, or whatever service you're providing, whether it's a sale of a product, to try and understand as much as possible what that person or that client expects from you is incredibly important in keeping a healthy relationship with your clients. And that's a discussion which needs to be had regularly with clients. Some clients more regularly than others, but it's very important, as in any business, to know if there's anything going on, any issues, as our suppliers come to us and want to also have a catch up and know if everything's all right. One needs to have the same sort of discussion or relationship with your clients. And specifically when taking on new clients, it's all good and well when there's a new client and you're going through, everything's good, but to just in that stage have a good understanding of what is expected of you and vice versa. So strategy, I'm not going to touch on that much now, but I think the one thing which I will mention here is in any business, but in a veterinary business also, if you have a strategy and you want to grow your business over 3 to 5 years, it's quite difficult if, when you're in your quiet periods, you have the energy to sort of work on your strategy and growing your business, but to keep the energy and keep focusing on that through the busy periods is quite difficult. And that's where it does help to have a little bit more depth, people that can help you work on growing your business. One of the best decisions we made 4 years ago or so was employing a veterinary nurse. We're at that point now we probably need 2, and I think using paraveterinarians within veterinary practices is definitely going to be a big thing going forward, as there's a shortage of vets. Cost implications on our clients, how intensive they are, they're going to become much more price sensitive. So certain things can be outsourced to paraveterinarians or to vet nurses, HTs, and that's a beneficial thing. One has to look at that positively. Yeah, just on that note, I mean, we've been able to offer a lot of other services to our clients using a vet nurse, which wouldn't be feasible us doing it because it would have been too expensive for the client. And these have really been value add for our clients, and they really do value those extra services which we offer. So then, just on a personal note, how involved do you want to get within the management of a practice? How much did you study to be a vet to also run a business? Does that interest you? Are you going to be able to make time and have the energy to do that, and consistently so? What type of business you want to set up? What of those sort of aspects of a business do you do internally, and what do you outsource externally? HR, certain things when we were just Yanni and I, we outsourced a bit of our HR, but then there's no knowledge really of your business. There's normally someone who's running an HR type business. They come in. If you've got a disciplinary, which is great, they just deal with it and it's done, but it's often not the case. You want to be able to speak about different options with a HR person. So certain things can be outsourced. Bookkeeping, for example, depends the size of your business and what your needs are. And the key thing, financial gain versus job satisfaction, what your purpose is, what do you want, but there's also a need thing, not just what you want. Your business needs to run, and it needs to be successful, otherwise you're not going to have a job to satisfy you. So often you just pulled into it, and one needs to obviously look at that and see it as a positive and grow in the way in which you manage your business, or get people to help you are better at that than you. And then, yeah, how do you get a mentor to help you? I think mentorship is incredibly important, and involving people around you that can carry the burden of running a practice, which is an extremely rewarding thing as well. Relationships with staff, employing people, having a good, healthy team. It's incredibly rewarding. So that's just a slide. It's all good when it's going well and you've got time to do things, but the typical challenges you might find in a dairy practice or any practice, it can be unpredictable and often hits you when other things are not going well. Might be working long days, staff falling sick with COVID, people giving wrong advice, fridges switching off and losing 100,000 rands worth of stock. All of these things can happen, as in any business. And yeah, just learning to compartmentalize your business, not taking your work home as much as possible, finding what keeps you satisfied within your business, and focusing on those things. And then just involving people around you, as I said, to a great team really helps grow a successful business. And then being able to pull yourself away from your business and see the forest for the trees. I think that's a saying we use quite often in our practice. When you're looking at a small little problem and you're not having perspective. And I think that's incredibly important, to surround yourself with people that give you perspective and help you to overcome the small problems and not to focus on them too much, and to see things in a different way. And that definitely helps you solve problems. And that's it. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Adams. Do you have any questions for Dr. Adam? You can use the chat bar or raise your hand with the icon.
Now you can see me, I think.
Yeah, welcome. Okay, there we've got one question, Luke Bauer. Luke, you can continue, just unmute yourself.
Hey, Mrs. Piffer, good morning, sir. How are you this morning?
Good morning, thanks, Luke. Good in yourself.
Can't complain, thank you, sir. Sir, I'm a student currently studying animal science, and my goal is to get into veterinary science, with the end goal of becoming a dairy veterinary professional. At this point, it's proving a bit difficult for me. So I was wondering, I saw there's a para-veterinary course called Animal Health Technician, become an animal health technician. Would you recommend doing something like that? So I heard you talking about the veterinary nurses being a very good addition to veterinary practice.
Yeah, so I think if the veterinary side doesn't work out, and things often happen for a reason, but the animal health technician, there really seems to be a growing demand, and I'd put the vet nurses and the AHT in the same category. We employ on our urban or on our small animal side quite a number of AHTs, so that's within a small animal practice, working with dogs and cats. But there are definitely a number of practices around South Africa, large animal dairy practices, large herd dairy practices and whatnot, who are using animal health technicians. So definitely I know within state veterinary services, there's a demand for it. And definitely on the private side, I think there's going to be a growing demand for it. There's quite a big push centrally for the paraveterinarians to, grow what they are allowed to do from a business side. So a regulatory point of view, things are opening up quite a bit for AHTs, animal health technicians. So yeah, if you've got the right, it's a good skill set definitely to have. And there will definitely be a demand going forward for AHTs for sure.
Thank you very much, Doctor.
Pleasure, Luke.
Thank you, Luke. Our next question is from Nobu. Nobu, you can unmute yourself.
Hello.
Hi, Nobu.
Oh, hi. I wanted to ask, what would you say are the advantages of being a consultant?
Can you just repeat that? What are of being a consultant?
What are the advantages of being a consultant?
I think there's a huge amount of advantages of being a consultant. As I said, your overheads and your cost base is quite low. You're essentially selling your brain and whatever other reporting or whatever knowledge you have, advisory knowledge you have. So your costs are low. That'll definitely be a big advantage. I think being part of a business from a consultant point of view is very rewarding. So if you can build a strong skill set, which is where there's demand for it, and you feel comfortable and confident in that skill set, offering and being utilized for that skill set, I think is incredibly rewarding. And I think there's a great sense of purpose in that. But it depends on what area of consultancy you're going into, and also what your experience is. There's a lot of consultants out there who don't necessarily have qualifications, but they have great experience and knowledge that they've built up over years. So it can be quite a challenging and competitive environment. And, it's also personality based, how you sort of get utilized by a farming unit. But I think it can be incredibly rewarding. And as I said, for myself, the consultancy type work that we do, it can be pretty stressful because you're responsible for quite big decisions, and you're being involved in questions are being asked, which can account for millions of rands. So you're often putting your head on the block for what you're saying. But if you're confident within what you're saying, and it works out, then obviously it's very rewarding, and it's good relationships. I mean, those relationships that you build up are very rewarding. Don't know if that answers your question.
It does. Thank you so much.
Pleasure.
And also, I wanted to find out. Obviously, we're not in it for the finances, but is it more financially rewarding to be a consultant than to open up a practice?
I think the one thing that I would definitely say is that you're not going to become a consultant without having a decent amount of experience. So I think specifically, it depends how you approach it, and maybe what your qualifications are and what your background is from, what you have to offer to a client. You probably could do better as a consultant, and you're probably going to be a lot leaner. As I said, I mean, you're able to, fly out to different countries and offer your expertise and be utilized from that point of view. But I think you've also got to be sort of understand that building up a name and a brand within the industry is incredibly important, and that definitely doesn't happen overnight. So how you reach that point where you become a successful consultant, I can't give you the answer on how that would work without being a practitioner first, maybe. But I think the way in which vets have been seen by farmers is changing, and we've definitely been seen, I think, more from an advisory point of view. So it's not to say that that's not just going to happen, that one can, just go straight into consultancy.
Thank you so much.
Pleasure.
Okay, Dr. Adams, we've got another question here. What is the percentage of dairy vets or feedlot vets that are actually employed on a full-time basis on site by individual dairy or feedlot business farms, and if there's any in South Africa? And then what is the possible risks associated with taking such opportunities as a new graduate in terms of career development, and will not get to a point where it may become monotonous?
Yeah, that's a very good question. I think the percentage at this stage, because there's probably not a huge amount of, our market is only so big. So in the States, for example, or China, I suppose, where there's really big dairies and feedlots, not to say we don't have big ones in this country, but there's probably only a handful of guys in this country operating at that sort of level that would merit them employing their own vet. So, yeah, I'm struggling to think of, call it 1 to 5% of producers are roughly, say, around there. Someone else might have better data on that, but not many. I think the pros and the cons, and that's definitely a good part of the question, is that when you're recently qualified, you building your skill set, and you get out of one sport with only so many practical skills, and aligning yourself with other vets or older vets to build that skill set is incredibly important. So the mentorship part of it is incredibly important. So I think you'd miss out on that if in that first 5 years you aren't picking up tricks and practical tips from veterinarians, and that sort of discussion or the relationship that you can have with older veterinarian who's got more experience, a more experienced veterinarian, I think is incredibly important. But I think on the positive side, what you would pick up from a management point of view, I know there are vets and even consultants who started out sort of being involved in dairy farms from a management point of view initially. They build up great experience, and that's obviously something which you can't be taught either. So that what you would pick up would be incredibly important from an experience point of view. Yeah.
Okay, thank you, Dr.
Yeah.
Okay, we've got another question from Chanel Steenekamp. Chanel, you can continue, and then I think it will be the last question as we're running out of time. Thank you.
Thanks, Eliana. Hi, Gordon. Hope you're doing well. Gordon, I want to focus a bit on the health side of the dairy that you're involved in. I just want to know if you ever look at health reports regarding milk sampling and somatic cell counts and SST mastitis for individual, not just the tank samples of the dairy herds.
We do look at it. We probably, I think, less than what was done in the past. So definitely bulk, as you mentioned. From a sort of a clinical point of view and a health point of view, we're quite regularly doing antibiograms on clinical cases to try and build a picture of, the microbial resistance within herds and microbial efficiency. But sort of whole herd samples, we've got a couple of herds that are sampling regularly. And obviously that's sort of incredibly important information to have. But I think it's just from a logistics point of view, potentially cost point of view, being slightly prohibitive. Not as many producers are doing that as what we would like. It would be great if all of them could do it, but we, for those reasons, definitely not where it should be.
Okay. And just one more question. I know we're touching on a sensitive one with the qualifications and consultancy and such. I know as animal scientists, we have to be part of the SACNASP and register as professionals with a certain amount of background. You have to have of expertise and experience. Yeah, I just want to hear your thoughts on, I heard you referring to people that the experience that they've come up with all the years, but the importance of being qualified and having that backing of what's the word that you can call it, a place that you are registered and accountable for.
Mm-hmm. I think the issue there is, like, for example, the SAVC, South African Veterinary Council, vets are regulated, and so if you belong to a regulatory body, you almost to a detriment, because you are going to be policed and regulated as a positive thing, because obviously they're looking after also the good side of being regulated. But a lot of lay people, if they're not performing any functions which are sort of falling under any other body, which is from a regulatory point of view, that they can be, you know, charged for, you know, practicing as a veterinarian. But if consultants, it's a very gray area. If you're coming in and giving advice, it's that farmer's decision who he listens to, and it can be anyone who comes off the street who's got great experience or is very clever at doing something. If he offers good advice, and it might be, you know, he might have an agenda, it might be honest, it might be dishonest, and there are a lot of very clever people in all of these industries, but who regulates them, who polices them if they're not belonging to anybody, and any regulatory body, and if they're not performing something which can be regulated by South African Veterinary Council, whatever regulatory body, you know, you belong to.
Good. No, thanks for your feedback. Appreciate.
Okay.
Thank you, Chanel. Thank you, Dr. Adam. Thank you for your time and your presentation and giving all the insight of how it is for a vet to manage his own dairy practice and all the information you gave. Wishing you luck with your practice and all your endeavors.
Thank you very much.